For 75 years, Farm Equipment Manufacturers Association members have been bringing choice, value, and innovation to agriculture. Dealers are more profitable with Shortline manufacturers, and customers prefer equipment from FEMA Shortline manufacturers.
You guys know why I'm here today. We want to capture your dad's influence and history and some specifics about why he was worthy of being in the Hall of Fame. And so I want to interview the sons on their dad's place in this world too. So maybe I'll just start. Tell me what was going on in 1962 when he decided to do this stone picker. Tell us what life was like for him and what caused that.
Well, we were pretty young back then. I was 2, or was I 3? But anyways, that's when in 1962. That's when kind of Dad got inspired to do something. Even before, he was a welder. He took welding lessons, instructions in Regina. At a school in Regina, and instead of playing baseball and hockey and everything else young people do, he liked building. And the rock picker really wasn't the first thing he ever built. It was really like V-plow blades, snow blades, and he put it on tractors and opened up school routes, in the country. And that's kind of what he did. That was his passion. And in 1962, and we don't really have the exact time, but sometime during that year, he started making the conventional real type rock picker. And, just like anything else, probably the first one, maybe even the second one didn't really work, but he kept at it. And every time he designed, a rock picker, he was designing the next rock, I'm going to make something, he's going to make it better, right? And I think the very first rock picker he sold that was actually, saleable was it was sold to a Saskatchewan farmer, and I think the year was 64. And his first rock picker was John Deere Green, because that's all he had. He had a gallon of John Deere Green, and that's what he used. So his next machine, he came up with yellow. And I asked Dad, why did you pick yellow? And he says, yellow was a flashy color. Yellow was a color that got attention. And we stuck with it ever since. We probably, made a few changes over the years with shades, but that's what he wanted. He wanted he wanted that attention, and Dad was, he wasn't an engineer. He was a designer. He was an inventor. They're a rare breed. And because of his probably lack of engineering, he always he made it strong enough just by the looks of the machine. Whenever in doubt, add metal, and that was his thing. And eventually when, we moved to Regina in 66, and the only reason we left I should actually go back. He converted his barn to a factory, back on the farm, because that's where we're from. We're from Raymore, Saskatchewan, a small town, and we lived on the farm. So he converted his red, hip roof barn to a factory, and eventually had 2 shifts of workers until finally, later in 66, we actually had to make a move to the city and get closer to a labor force. That was his humble beginnings in 60, from 62 to basically 60, left in 66. I think he incorporated to Degelman Industries Limited in 65. Before that, it was kind of Wilf's Construction. He thought himself as a construction name, but he finally changed his name in 65. So yeah, that's
so he was on the farm. He was 32 when he did this. How was he bringing the food to the table for you kids prior to the launch of that rock picker? Was he a farmer?
Well,
or doing other things?
He was a farmer. He was a farmer, and they had animals too. Like he had cattle, he had chickens. He was a mixed farmer. And he went to the bank. He went to the Bank of Montreal and asked for a pretty big loan for a guy that's pretty young and had some dreams. And he basically, it was a big risk back then. But yeah, we were all fed. It's pretty humble farm. Nothing spectacular, and he made a go of it. Back then, you got to remember, back then there's selling rock pickers. That was a new thing. Like everybody had stone boats and picking them by hand. So this was solving a major problem. Like people were, I shouldn't say lined up, but it was a product that was required. Everybody hated picking rocks.
Jack, it's like one of those, when you say it was one of those products that it only comes around every once in a while where there's a product that comes out and actually changes people's lives. And that product kind of did. So Dad grew up humble, like Jack says, and they worked hard, and their summer holidays were picking stones by hand in the Summerfellow fields. And that was their deal. And that was a lot of families' deal. That's what they did. And when that stone picker came, when he developed that impacted a lot of people, including himself, including Dad, not only for the success of the business and how he grew the business, but it just kind of changed these families' lives in Saskatchewan and the surrounding areas. And that was a backbreaking thing. And that's what those people were like. That's what Dad did when you asked what did he do to put food on the table? Well, they worked harder than any of us could ever imagine. They worked all day, hard farm. We complain that we work hard sometimes. Well, it's not even close. They worked farm hard. And then when he was done that day, then he wanted to be successful, and he went into the barn and he would weld till midnight and intake the smoke in non-ventilated barn and trying to make it happen, and then wake up at 6 a.m. and 5:30 in the morning and do it all again. And those were, that was his dad's farm. That's what they were successful farmers, but success back then was just making sure everybody was comfortable and didn't have anything big and I think about that generation, and they were amazing people. We have no idea what hard work actually was. And he kind of took it up a notch. Like Jack said, he wasn't playing baseball. He wasn't playing hockey. He wasn't playing football. He was welding, or he was farming, or he was looking after cattle or horses or whatever. That was his thing. So that hard work, that had exclamation mark on it. They were brutally hardworking people for sure.
But you know what, Paul? You know what? I know the focus is on Dad. Because he's the inventor, he's the entrepreneur, he's the guy that started it. But back then, boy, you got to give Mom a lot of credit too. And a lot of those legacy people that started these farms. Look what Mom did. Oh my God, she was the secretary. She fed everybody. She did payroll for the people. And she had a major job when we first moved to Regina, when we actually started our first factory, off the farm. So they both worked amazingly hard.
What's Mom's name?
Her name is Eileen.
It's funny that you say that, Jack. You're totally right. And she never, they're remote. They weren't in the city. So the welders were actually staying at the house, and she was feeding, she was buying the materials. She was cooking lunches and evenings, and they were farming. They were doing it all. And she was kind of the protector of him. You had to go through Eileen to get to Wilf. And she was the master of no. She could say no to anybody. And it's like, no, he's not available.
And the banker.
She was a little tougher than Wilf was, probably.
Is Mom still with us?
No, she passed about, it's 10, 12 years now.
Dad is he in a nursing home? Did I hear?
No, he's at home. He's 94 years old. He has, it's funny. Does he have dementia or is he just 94? I don't really know. He's actually not too bad. You have great conversations with him, but he's 94. He's a frail old man now. He's living at home. My sister Leanne lives with him, and then we also have a caregiver that comes into the house too. So he's not in a home, but he's in his home, and right now it's working.
When did he step back from the day to day and put the business in your hands? When would that have happened?
Yeah,
When he was 92.
yeah. You probably just short that answer pretty good. You know what? Here's Dad's role. Dad's role was he was a designer. He looked after R&D. And the day-to-day stuff, the running the factory and all the other stuff, we kind of looked after for many, many years. And there's primarily there are four of us, Roland and Scott and Paul and myself, that for years, decades we're kind of running the show. And but Dad was always our boss, but his main thing is he was running the farm and he was running R&D. He didn't, he didn't have to look after production or marketing or anything else. We did all that. So we kind of made it work.
Had he been educated in mechanical design, or was it just a farm tinker who?
It's self-taught. It's self-taught. It's learning off the farm. My dad does not have a university education. And I don't even think he's got his high school diploma, but it's all self-taught.
At the time, you had mentioned that he was welding on the farm. Was he taking other welding job shop type work prior to the stone picker?
Yeah, I know he took a welding class at I think it was, I don't know if it was called Belfer High School, but it was a Belfer school in Regina. Belfer Collegiate. But anyways, that's where he got his love from welding. And then he came back, and of course he was farming with his dad too. Like his brother was nearby, his dad was nearby, and then he farmed as well. So, there was lots of Degelmans there and family, and they all helped each other, and that's what they did. And then in his spare time, he tinkered with snow plows and blades for tractors and building rock pickers, and then he decided to get serious. Okay, I got to turn this barn into a factory. And then I think that's where we had to get rid of the animals, the cows and the chickens and everything, and basically turn it. That was a big step, and that was a big risk back then.
He did some piecework for Pete Anderson. Pete Anderson was a manufacturer in Saudi. And he built some farm equipment, and Dad took on some piecework. So he'd make Pete Anderson maybe an assembly, and that would kind of keep him busy for a winter. And I think that's kind of where he kind of learned how to do nice quality work. And I know Pete Anderson loved him because he would come in and he'd have his stuff done and give him a nice quality assembly. So he was doing anything just to try to get ahead and being a young guy, he wanted success, and he like Jack says, he was doing everything to try to make it work, putting custom mounting dozer blades on tractors and doing some piecework and farming and then, like Jack said, he built this rock picker, and the first one didn't work, and he just kind of kept on at it until it kind of was working pretty good. And then some of the neighboring farmers started buying them, and he, like Jack said, he knew he had to either go farming or get serious and try manufacturing. And his father wasn't telling him, go chase your dreams. His father was saying, "Hey, what are you doing, Wilford? You're crazy. You got a farm here. You got a farm." And he kind of like, "No, this is what we're going to be doing. This is what I'm going to do." And that's what he loved to do. And I think he I think he kind of got a kick out of that. He got a kick out of, helping these farmers. He knew what that farmer was going through, and I think he enjoyed giving that farmer a piece of equipment that they could find some value in.
At the time, how many rock pickers were out there on the market available for purchase? Was he the first in, or what did it look like?
No, we weren't first, because Pete Anderson was, the Andersons had a rock picker. We could have been second. We really don't know. We weren't first.
There is a few prong type pickers.
Yeah.
Dad's the real type rock picker was a rock picker that you didn't have to stop when you saw a rock. You could just you can go through it. It picks it up, it processes it, puts it in a bucket, and you keep on going. So it was kind of that picker that you could make some time with. That you were pretty efficient with it.
Yeah, like Paul called it a prong type rock picker, but it could be a fork type rock picker. It's almost like a bucket type of thing, and then it scoops it, and you just kind of stop. And so there was those type of rock pickers, but
there wasn't much around.
No,
I know, and this is maybe off topic a little bit, but my wife's grandmother. Here's a story. She passed away probably 25 years ago, and she was in a town not far from Raymore, maybe 30 miles from where Dad was manufacturing. And every day she wrote her journal. And when she passed away, we looked at her journal. We were reading her journal, and there was an entry, and this was in the 60s, and her entry was Gerald, the neighbor, came over with this rock machine, this stone picker, and she talked about, oh my, what a wonderful machine. So I never knew this. No one knew this woman. This was just a neighboring community, a random family, and his rock picker was brought into their land. And she would have journaled about how this impacted their family, right? Well, this stone picker came in, and oh my, how it collected these rocks, and it saved us all this. So anyways, I guess I can't stress enough of how it impacted communities when that machine, and it, like there was probably some other machines that were used, but when he ramped up and he started producing them, people were saving their milk money to buy a rock picker. Like that was a they were, like when Jack says they weren't lined up, but they weren't wait. There was times where they were coming in and they didn't even have paint on them, and they insisted, no, I need that rock picker today. Your dad would give them a gallon of yellow paint, and you paint it at home then. But it was a star like you've never seen.
Taking the worst job on the farm and
absolutely. That's exactly right, Mike. Taking the worst job on the farm and taking that away from them.
And the machine back then was there's no hydraulics. There was just a hydraulic to lower and raise the grill for the height of the grill. The rest was ground driven. So the wheel generated the power to turn the reel. So the tire wheel generated the drive power for the reel. So it was a simple machine to operate because all you had to do is drive. And then if you drive a certain speed and you just lower your grill, you can scoop up surface rocks. So it was pretty simple. And then if you get jammed, you can back up and the reel goes backwards. So, and then eventually we had a clutch on it, and then we went hydraulic, and then we went PTO, but that's kind of how it started.
But Dad was like when you talk about his designs, they were very straightforward, very simple, like very, like he always used to say, well, that's too Swiss watch for me. That's too fancy. Less complexity was always his kind of go-to. Boil things down, keep things simple. If you keep it simple, he did not want anything to be breaking down. And that's what equipment was back then. Everybody had a piece of equipment with a welder mounted on the frame of it. Everybody was fixing all the time. So he knew the value of a good, strong piece of equipment that was straightforward. And that's what his deal was. Even the Strawmaster jack, like it wasn't big parallel linkage. It was straightforward, straight to the point, and it worked. And you could put, you just put thousands of hours on the thing. And, there's machines out there that are still working, that are 60 years old, that are still picking stones, that are operational.
How did he go to market? Did he get dealers early on, or just fairs, or how
No.
You guys
he sold direct.
This product out?
He started direct. People went to him.
Right.
And then the word spread, and simple. Back then there wasn't too many trade shows. There was exhibitions, like just like you Americans have county fairs. Well, we have exhibitions where with the Ferris wheels and everything, and then we always have this machinery row. And that's kind of how it started, right? And so very humble advertising ways of. We had a paper called the Western Producer, and there was a couple ads in there, and just little black and white.
I think the ad was a $25 ad in the Western Producer is what is kind of how they started. I would say any kind of advertising.
Yeah,
but it was local. It was local farmers that were buying it, and it just kind of spread a little farther, went into Yorkton, into the rock areas, into those tough farmland. And those are the people that really valued that machine. But it did all start with neighbors, and just like his staff at the farm, it was relatives and neighbors that were in the barn and producing stuff. So it was very local.